Doris Duke was dubbed the richest girl in the world from the moment she was born. As the sole heir to her father's American Tobacco Company fortune, she lived a life of unimaginable luxury and eccentricity. Her Newport estate, Rough Point, was a testament to her power. To the public, she was an enigmatic, often reclusive, and fiercely independent heiress who, despite her immense wealth, seemed to operate by her own set of rules. In October 1966, that private world was shattered by violence. Duke and her interior designer, Eduardo Tirella, were leaving the estate in a station wagon. What happened next has been shrouded in mystery for decades. The car suddenly lurched forward, crashed through a set of iron gates, and crushed Tirella against a tree, killing him instantly. Duke told police it was a tragic accident. She claimed she had meant to put the car in park, but accidentally hit the accelerator. The Newport police chief, a friend of Duke's, closed the case in less than a week. For years, rumors swirled that it was murder. Tirella had reportedly just told Duke he was leaving her employ to work in Hollywood, and the two had been arguing fiercely. Despite a recent eyewitness coming forward, the case has never been reopened. Doris Duke used her immense wealth and influence to silence the story, taking the secret of what really happened that day to her grave. To the public of the Gilded Age, Stanford White was a genius, the preeminent architect of his time. As a partner at the famed firm Meckham, Mead, White, he designed America's most iconic buildings, Madison Square Garden, the Washington Square Arch, and lavish mansions for the Astors and Vanderbilts. He was a tastemaker, a handsome, charismatic figure who literally built the world of New York's high society. His public life was one of artistic brilliance and impeccable social standing. But White led a shocking double life. He was a sexual predator with a taste for very young, aspiring actresses and chorus girls. In his luxurious apartment atop Madison Square Garden, he hosted hedonistic parties and installed a now infamous red velvet swing. It was there he would seduce and often exploit teenage girls, most notoriously Evelyn Nesbit, whom he met when she was just 16. He showered her with gifts and promises of stardom, all while preying on her innocence far from the public eye. This secret life came to a violent end in 1906. Nesbit's millionaire husband, Harry Thor, walked up to White at a rooftop theater and shot him dead in front of hundreds of witnesses. The subsequent trial of the century exposed all of White's depravity, shattering his carefully crafted image. The great architect of the Gilded Age was revealed to be a monster hiding in plain sight. The Vanderbilt name was synonymous with immense wealth and power. William Vanderbilt, grandson of the Commodore, and his wife Alva were pillars of New York society, their massive Petit Chateau on Fifth Avenue the epicenter of social life. To the public, they were a formidable dynasty, a perfect union of old money and ruthless social ambition. Alva, especially, was known for her iron will, having forced her daughter Consuelo to marry a duke against her will just to secure a title. But behind closed doors, the marriage was a cold, bitter arrangement. William, trapped in a loveless union, had been carrying on a long-term affair and was desperate for his freedom. But Alva wouldn't grant him a divorce. In the 1890s, it meant social ruin for a woman, so William made a deal. He effectively bribed his own wife for his freedom, offering her a staggering settlement worth over $10 million, the equivalent of hundreds of millions today, plus their Newport Palace marble house. It was a secret transaction, a golden handshake for a golden cage. Alva took the money, secured her social standing, and promptly remarried. William was finally free to marry his mistress. It was a stunningly modern transaction hidden behind Victorian propriety, proving that for the Gilded Age, elite, even love and freedom had a price tag, and reputation was a commodity to be bought and sold. Henry Clay Frick, the chairman of Carnegie Steel, cultivated the image of a refined industrialist. He was a patron of the arts, a quiet and stern businessman whose name would one day adorn one of New York's most prestigious museums. His public persona was one of order, efficiency, and the inevitable march of progress, a man who brought jobs and prosperity to Pittsburgh's steel country. He was seen as the unflappable mind behind America's industrial might. In reality, Frick's success was built on a foundation of brutal, uncompromising suppression. During the infamous Homestead Strike of 1892, he revealed the shocking violence he was willing to employ to protect his profits. With Andrew Carnegie conveniently away in Scotland, Frick took charge. He refused to negotiate with the Union, locked the workers out, and hired 300 armed Pinkerton agents to break the strike by force. The result was an all-out battle, a bloody firefight on the banks of the Monongahela River that left at least 10 men dead and dozens wounded. Frick never expressed remorse. He saw the violence as a necessary evil to maintain control, a chilling display of how little human life mattered compared to industrial power. The Homestead Strike forever tarnished his name, revealing the ruthless cruelty that festered beneath the calm, philanthropic veneer of one of America's greatest robber barons. John Pierpont Morgan was more than a man, he was an institution. The undisputed king of American finance, he single-handedly saved the U.S. economy from collapse on more than one occasion. His power was absolute, his gaze famously piercing, and his presence commanded total respect. He projected an image of unshakable, almost divine authority. In an era that prized lineage and physical perfection as signs of good breeding, Morgan was the ultimate patriarch. But Morgan harbored a deeply personal and visible secret that caused him immense shame, his grotesquely swollen purple nose. It was the result of a chronic skin condition called rhinophyma, which disfigured his face and made him intensely self-conscious. He loathed being photographed, as the primitive cameras and flash powder of the day seemed to accentuate his deformity. This insecurity, so at odds with his immense public power, sometimes boiled over into rage. During one session, he was so incensed by the photographer's persistence that he exploded. The irony was devastating. The man who controlled the world's finances couldn't control his own appearance. His disfigurement was a constant, humiliating reminder of his own human frailty, a secret vulnerability he carried on his face for all to see, undermining the godlike image he worked so hard to maintain. The Mellon family of Pittsburgh represented the pinnacle of American old money. Their fortune, built by Judge Thomas Mellon and expanded by his son, Treasury Secretary Andrew Mellon, was vast and diversified across banking, oil, and aluminum. For over a century, the Mellon name has been synonymous with immense wealth, political influence, and blue blood philanthropy, funding everything from the National Gallery of Art to Carnegie Mellon University. They were a dynasty seemingly untouched by the messier problems of the world. But a dark thread runs through the family's history, a secret often only whispered about in society circles, a devastating multi-generational struggle with addiction. The immense pressure and privilege of being a Mellon created a breeding ground for substance abuse. This family curse was tragically embodied by Matthew Mellon, an heir to the banking fortune, who battled an OxyContin addiction for years. Despite access to the best rehab facilities money could buy, he was found dead in a Cancun hotel room in 2018 after a relapse. Matthew's public struggles and tragic death pulled back the curtain on the family's private pain. It was a heartbreaking reminder that the gilded cage of old money offered no protection from the deeply human disease of addiction, a secret sorrow that haunted one of America's most powerful and private families. No name is more associated with American philanthropy than Rockefeller. After building an empire with Standard Oil, John D. Rockefeller dedicated the second half of his life to giving his fortune away. The Rockefeller Foundation, established in 1913, projected an image of enlightened benevolence, aiming to promote the well-being of mankind throughout the world by funding advancements in medicine and public health. They were seen as global saviors, using their vast wealth to cure disease and uplift humanity. But beneath this noble mission lay a deeply sinister secret. The Rockefeller Foundation was one of the leading funders of the eugenics movement in America and Germany. From the 1920s onward, it poured millions into organizations and research that promoted forced sterilization, racial purity, and so-called race hygiene. They funded the Kaiser Wilhelm Institute's research on anthropology, human heredity, and eugenics work that was later explicitly used by the Nazis to justify their horrific racial policies. This chilling chapter was largely whitewashed from the Foundation's public history for decades. The family that presented itself as a healer of humanity was secretly bankrolling a pseudoscience that sought to eliminate undesirables from the human gene pool. It remains the darkest, most disturbing secret of America's greatest philanthropic dynasty. The DuPonts are American industrial royalty. Their family dynasty began with a gunpowder mill in 1802 and grew into one of the world's largest chemical and manufacturing empires. For 2 centuries, the DuPont name has signified immense wealth, patrician status, and an almost aristocratic mystique centered around their ancestral estates in Delaware. They were a symbol of enduring, stable, old money power. This carefully maintained image of gentility was irrevocably shattered in 1996 by one of their own, John E. DuPont, heir to a massive family fortune. Living as a paranoid recluse on his family's Foxcatcher farm estate, John descended into a world of delusion and madness. A lifelong ornithologist and wrestling enthusiast, he had built a state-of-the-art training facility for Olympic wrestlers on the property. It was there that he shot and killed Dave Schultz, an Olympic gold medalist and beloved coach, in cold blood. The subsequent trial was a media circus that exposed the deep rot within the family. John's defense argued he was a paranoid schizophrenic who believed Schultz was part of an international conspiracy to kill him. The prosecution painted him as a spoiled, arrogant murderer. The DuPont name, once a symbol of prestige, was now linked to a bizarre and horrifying crime, proving that not even centuries of old money could prevent the decay of a disturbed mind. As the daughter of John D. Rockefeller, the world's richest man, Edith Rockefeller McCormick was raised to be a titan. She was intelligent, educated, and expected to be a leader in Chicago society, a living symbol of the Rockefeller family's discipline and public duty. She married Harold McCormick, heir to the international harvester fortune, uniting 2 of America's most powerful dynasties. Her public life was one of immense wealth, philanthropy, and social prestige. But privately, Edith was crumbling under the immense pressure of being a Rockefeller. After the deaths of 2 of her children, she fell into a deep, debilitating depression that would haunt her for the rest of her life. She abandoned the rigid expectations of her family and turned to the burgeoning field of psychoanalysis, becoming one of Carl Jung's most devoted patients and patrons. She spent years in Switzerland under his care, delving into mysticism, astrology, and reincarnation in a desperate search for meaning. Her family was horrified. Her father saw her fascination with psychology as a frivolous waste of money and a public embarrassment. Edith's quest for inner peace was seen as a mental breakdown, a secret shame to be managed and hidden. Her story reveals the profound emotional and psychological toll that came with bearing one of the world's most famous names, a gilded cage that offered every material comfort but no escape from personal despair. Cornelius Vanderbilt II, grandson of the Commodore, was the epitome of the stern, respectable Gilded Age patriarch. As head of the family, he was charged with preserving its immense fortune and, more importantly, its reputation. He was a deeply religious man who projected an image of unwavering moral rectitude and absolute authority. In the Vanderbilt dynasty, the patriarch's word was law, especially when it came to matters of marriage and lineage. This absolute control was shattered by his own son, Cornelius Vanderbilt III, known as Neely. In 1896, Neely fell in love with Grace Wilson, a woman his parents deemed wholly unsuitable. While wealthy, Grace's fortune came from her father, a man the Vanderbilts looked down upon. Cornelius too forbade the marriage, but Neely defied him, choosing love over his inheritance. The patriarch's response was swift and brutal. He disinherited his firstborn son, cutting him off with a fraction of what he was due. Even after Cornelius II's death, the punishment stood. His will left the bulk of his 70 million fortune to Neely's younger brother, Alfred. Neely received just 1.5 million. It was the ultimate act of patriarchal control, a public declaration that family duty and obedience trumped personal happiness. The great Vanderbilt family was fractured from within, a secret rift created by a father who would rather break his own son than compromise his rigid principles. The Harriman name, forged by railroad tycoon E.H. Harriman, was a titan of American industry and politics. The family cultivated an image of tough, respectable capitalism and later distinguished public service, with E.H.'s son Averell becoming governor of New York and a prominent diplomat. They were seen as powerful nation builders, operating at the highest levels of finance and government with unimpeachable integrity. But the family's history is marked by ugly accusations of corruption, suggesting a willingness to play dirty to maintain power. In 1912, during a sensational trial, a bombshell allegation was dropped against E.H. Harriman's cousin, Joseph W. Harriman, president of the Harriman National Bank. A witness testified that Joseph was involved in a scheme to deliver a bribe to none other than Samuel Gompers, the head of the American Federation of Labor, to influence a strike. While Joseph Harriman was never convicted in that specific case, he would later be imprisoned for bank fraud in the 1930s. The accusations tainted the family name, revealing a potential dark side to their empire building. It suggested that behind the facade of legitimate business and political power, there was a hidden world of backroom deals, bribes, and corruption used to crush labor and manipulate the levers of power. Cordelia Scarf May was an heiress to the vast Mellon banking and industrial fortune, one of the wealthiest women in America. To the public, she was a reclusive, eccentric philanthropist who lived a quiet life on her sprawling Pennsylvania estate. She donated generously to local causes, like environmental conservation and family planning. Her public persona was that of a harmless, if slightly odd, benefactress, using her inherited old money for the good of her community. But this quaint image masked a dark, decades-long secret obsession. Cordelia Scaife May was one of the most influential and powerful funders of the modern anti-immigration movement in America. Beginning in the 1980s, she secretly poured hundreds of millions of dollars from her inherited fortune into a network of organizations dedicated to drastically reducing immigration, particularly from non-European countries. She funded groups that promoted what critics call racist and white nationalist ideologies, all while carefully hiding her role as their primary benefactor. It wasn't until after her death in 2005 that the full extent of her crusade was revealed, when the massive Colcom Foundation she created began distributing her fortune. The philanthropic heiress was posthumously unmasked as the godmother of the modern anti-immigration movement. Her secret legacy was not one of quiet conservation, but the weaponization of an old money fortune to fuel a deeply divisive and racially charged political agenda. 11 families, 11 dark secrets. Tell us which one shocked you the most, and subscribe if you enjoy our content.